The outer station of Limaris 9 hung like a silver ring above the blue gas clouds of a quiet planet. It was a place where humans and aliens worked together, but not always with trust. The Eliri were tall, crystal-skinned beings who glowed faintly in the dark. They believed humans were too emotional, too unpredictable. Yet humans were strong engineers and the station depended on their skills. Captain Elias Ward was one of those humans. He had spent 3 long months repairing damaged hulls, rewiring broken energy cells, and fixing airlock systems that no one else wanted to touch. He worked quietly, never arguing, never showing anger. Some of the alien workers respected him for his calm nature. Others kept their distance. One evening, a strange storm formed near the orbit. The plasma clouds outside began to spark with violent light. The warning alarm sounded through the entire living quarters. Power began to flicker in some sections, including the Eliri residential area. The temperature started to fall. The storm's radiation affected their energy systems, and soon the lights dimmed to a weak glow. Elias, still in his workshop, noticed the signal lights flashing red on his monitor. He saw one apartment section losing power fast. Without thinking twice, he grabbed his portable heat unit, wrapped it in a thermal blanket, and ran toward the affected corridor. The metal floor vibrated under his boots as the plasma waves hit the outer shield. Inside one of the cold rooms sat Sarai, a young Eliri technician. She was new to the station, barely out of her training cycles. Her silver-blue skin shimmered weakly under the dying lights. Her energy cell had stopped working, and she could feel the cold biting into her limbs. The Eliri body relied on inner heat from energy fields, and without them, their crystals turned dim. Sarai tried to fix the cell herself, but her hands were shaking too much. When she heard a knock on her door, she hesitated. No one from her kind would come during a plasma storm. She opened the door halfway and saw a human standing there holding a heat unit. Elias spoke softly. "You're losing temperature. May I come in?" Sarai blinked, unsure. Her people avoided close contact with humans. It was an old rule from before the peace treaty. I'm fine," she said, though her voice trembled. Elias looked around the dim room. "You're not fine. You'll freeze before the storm ends." He stepped in slowly, keeping his distance so she would not feel threatened. He placed the heater near her and switched it on. Warm orange light filled the space. For a moment, Sarai felt relief. Then the power flickered again and the air temperature dropped sharply. The heater wasn't enough. She tried to wrap herself in her thin blanket, but her crystal skin couldn't hold heat well. Elias frowned and looked at the control screen. The station's outer shields would hold, but the temperature would fall below safe levels in minutes. He took a deep breath. "Listen, my room is on the warm side. The power conduits there are still active. You can stay until the storm passes." Sarai shook her head quickly. "Eliri are not allowed in human quarters." "Then I'll stay here," Elias said firmly. He unfolded his emergency thermal blanket, a heavy fabric designed to trap body warmth, and placed it beside her. "This will help." She didn't move. "You should not risk your heat for me." He smiled slightly. "Heat is just heat. You need it more." The storm outside roared louder. The entire wall shuddered as radiation waves struck the hull. The lights went out completely, leaving only the soft glow of her crystal skin and the red flicker of the heater. Elias switched on his wrist lamp and sat on the floor near her, trying to balance the heat output. The silence stretched between them. She kept glancing at him, the strange human with tired eyes, grease-stained hands, and a calm tone. After a while, she asked quietly, "Why did you come here? You could have stayed safe in your own room." Elias shrugged. "Because you were freezing. Engineers don't ignore red lights." Sarai gave a faint smile, the first he had seen from her. "You sound like a mechanic, not a soldier." "I used to be both," he replied. His voice carried a soft sadness. "But fixing things keeps me busy. It makes sense even when people don't." The warmth from the heater slowly faded as the storm intensified. Elias checked his thermal readings. They were both in danger of hypothermia. He looked at her again, her glowing skin dimming, her lips trembling as the energy flow within her weakened. "Sarai," he said quietly, "if your core temperature drops any lower, you might go into shock. There's one option left. We can share heat under this blanket. It'll keep you alive until the storm passes." Her eyes widened. "That is forbidden." "I know," Elias said softly. "But rules don't matter if you're dead." She hesitated. The idea terrified her. Her people said that sharing warmth with another species linked their biofields, something deeply personal. Yet as she looked at the frost forming on the wall, she realized she might not survive the night. Finally, she nodded slowly. Elias spread the blanket and sat beside her, careful not to touch her skin directly. But when she began to shiver uncontrollably, he wrapped the blanket around both of them. The contact sent a faint glow through her crystals. Sarai gasped, not in fear but surprise. She could feel his heartbeat through the fabric, steady and strong. Human warmth felt different, alive and rhythmic. Her kind had no such pulse. It was strange, yet strangely comforting. Elias spoke softly, trying to distract her from the fear. Back on Earth, storms sound like this too. But we have oceans. The wind hits the waves and the sound is like music. Sarai listened quietly. Oceans, I have seen images. Endless water. That must be beautiful. It is, he said. The first time you see the sunrise over the sea, you realize how small you are and how lucky to be alive. Her crystal eyes reflected the faint light from his lamp. You speak of life with such warmth. My people say humans live quickly, burn fast. He chuckled softly. Maybe, but sometimes burning bright is worth it. The silence returned, gentler this time. The storm outside began to calm a little, and the air warmed slightly. Sarai leaned her head back against the wall, exhaustion finally catching up with her. Will you stay awake? She asked quietly. I'll try, Elias replied. Someone has to make sure the heat unit doesn't fail. Her eyes fluttered, her glow steady now. Before drifting to sleep, she whispered, Thank you, human. He smiled. My name's Elias. When she fell asleep, Elias sat still, listening to the slow rhythm of the storm. The light from her crystals shimmered under the blanket like tiny stars breathing beside him. He felt something unusual in his chest. Not attraction, but a quiet respect, a kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. Hours later, when the emergency lights came back online, the room brightened. Sarai stirred awake. She looked at him, realizing he had stayed awake the whole time, guarding the heat, making sure she was safe. Is it morning? She asked softly. Almost, he said with a tired smile. The storm's dying. She studied his face for a long moment. You should rest now. After I make sure your systems restart, he replied, standing up slowly. He reconnected the power line, replaced the melted fuse, and the room lights flickered back to normal brightness. Sarai stood beside him, her glow now bright again. You risked your life for me, she said quietly. Elias wiped his hands and gave a small shrug. It was the right thing to do. As he turned to leave, she said softly, Humans are strange. He smiled. You'll get used to us. When the door closed, Sarai sat down again, touching the spot on the blanket where his warmth had been. Her heart, if her people even called it that, beat in an odd rhythm. She didn't understand why her thoughts wouldn't quiet down. Outside, the first rays of artificial dawn spread across the metal station. And somewhere deep in her mind, the young Ailiri realized that something had changed inside her. A spark that began the moment she shared warmth with a human. Days turned into weeks on the station of Lumeris 9. The plasma storm stopped and life went back to its normal rhythm. Ships came and went, traders shouted in the market halls, and engineers repaired systems that never stayed fixed for long. But for Sarai, nothing felt normal anymore. Ever since that night in the storm, her thoughts would drift to Elias Ward. She remembered the way he had spoken, calm and gentle, even when the walls shook. She remembered the steady beat of his heart that had helped her sleep when she was scared. Every time she saw a human worker walk by, she looked twice, hoping it was him. But Elias had gone back to his regular work in the lower bays. He repaired ships most of the day, surrounded by loud noise and metal dust. To him, that night had simply been an act of kindness. One life saved, one duty done. Yet sometimes, when he passed through the residential sector, he caught himself glancing toward her corridor, wondering if she was well. One afternoon, Sarai decided she couldn't stay silent anymore. Her people's customs told her not to form attachments to outsiders, but she wanted to understand what she was feeling, so she went to the human engineering deck, her crystal skin glowing softly in the warm light. The workers turned to stare. An Ailiri rarely entered human territory. Elias noticed her immediately. He was fixing a damaged control panel, his sleeves rolled up, his hands covered in silver grease. Sarai? He said, surprised. What are you doing here? She looked around nervously. I wanted to thank you again. The night of the storm, you saved me. I didn't get to say enough, he smiled kindly. You already did. You're alive, and that's thanks enough. She shook her head. No, that's not all. My people talk about you. They say humans act before thinking, but you acted with care. I don't understand that. Elias leaned against the wall, wiping his hands. Maybe we're not as wild as they think. Sarai tilted her head, studying him. Maybe not. But they say I broke a rule that night. They say sharing warmth links our energy fields. The elders warned me I might never feel the same again. Elias frowned slightly. Do you feel different? She looked down. Yes, I can't stop thinking about that moment. I keep hearing your voice. It makes no sense. Elias chuckled softly, trying to ease her confusion. Maybe it's just memory. Scary nights do that? They leave marks? But Sarai didn't smile. Her eyes held an unfamiliar sadness. No, Captain Ward, it's more than memory. Something inside me changed. Before he could answer, another human engineer called out for help. Elias excused himself and returned to work, but Sarai remained there watching him. She noticed how patiently he explained things to others, how he never raised his voice even when parts failed again and again. Humans were noisy, emotional beings, but Elias carried silence like a strength. That night, back in her quarters, Sarai sat by the window looking out at the swirling gas clouds below. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. She touched her chest, wondering if what she felt was dangerous. The next day, she was called to the A'Leary Council chamber. The circular hall was lit with soft blue crystals, and the elders sat in a half-circle of light. Their eyes were calm but sharp. Sarai of the 8th cluster, one of them said, "You are spoken of often these days. It is said you accepted a human's warmth during the storm." She bowed her head. "Yes, Elder, he saved my life." "Do you understand what such contact means to our kind?" The elder asked. "The bond of warmth can merge energy patterns. It can cause confusion, emotion, or even attachment." Sarai nodded weakly. "I did not mean to break the rule." Another elder leaned forward. "Humans are unpredictable. You must be cautious. Do not let their nature draw you away from who you are." Sarai tried to stay calm, but her voice trembled slightly. "He is not like the others. He helped without asking for anything." The elders exchanged glances. "You defend him? Then the bond is already forming." "I don't understand it," she said quietly, "but I cannot deny it." The council dismissed her with a warning. She was not to interact closely with humans again. If she disobeyed, she could lose her post at the station. When she returned to her quarters, her heart felt heavy. She knew the rule was old, but it felt unfair. She hadn't asked for this connection. It had simply happened. Meanwhile, Elias received a message from Central Command. His assignment on Lumeris 9 was ending in 3 days. He was being transferred to another system, a mining colony far away. He packed his tools silently, feeling an odd emptiness he couldn't explain. Later that evening, while checking the outer bay sensors, Elias saw a faint glow moving across the dark corridor. Sarai. She approached him slowly, her light dimmer than usual. "You're leaving," she said softly. He nodded. "Orders came this morning," her hands clasped together tightly. "And you didn't tell me?" He hesitated. "I wasn't sure it mattered." "It does," she whispered. "More than you think." The silence between them grew thick. The hum of the station engines echoed faintly around them. Sarai looked up at him, her eyes full of quiet questions she didn't know how to ask. "Sarai," Elias said gently, "I didn't want to cause you trouble." "I know your people." "My people are afraid," she interrupted. "They live by rules made before they ever met someone like you." Elias sighed. "Rules keep people safe. But sometimes," she said softly, "they keep people apart." He looked at her then, really looked. The way her crystal skin caught the light. The way her voice carried both strength and sadness. "What do you want me to do?" he asked quietly. She didn't answer right away. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "Just promise me something." "What is it?" "Promise me you'll come back." Elias stared at her, feeling something he couldn't describe tighten in his chest. He wasn't used to promises. War had taught him that promises were fragile things. But this time he nodded slowly. "I'll come back," he said. "I don't break promises." Her lips curved into a faint, uncertain smile. "Humans say many things. And sometimes," Elias replied gently, "they mean them." They stood there for a long time, the hum of the station the only sound between them. Finally, he turned to leave. Before stepping away, he said softly, "Take care of yourself, Sarai." When he disappeared down the corridor, Sarai felt a strange emptiness inside, as if the warmth that had once filled her chest was fading again. She touched her heart, but it didn't glow as it used to. Days later, the human ship carrying Elias left orbit. Sarai stood at the observation deck, watching the engines flare into the distance. She didn't cry. Her people had no tears, but her light dimmed until it was barely visible. The other Eliri whispered about her, saying she had changed since the storm. They said she walked slower now, spoke less, and often stared at the stars for hours. And yet, inside her, something quiet kept burning. Every night before she rested, she replayed his words in her mind. "I'll come back." She didn't know if humans kept promises across galaxies, but she wanted to believe he would, far away. In another system, Elias worked on heavy machines, surrounded by noise and dust. But at night, when the lights dimmed, he found himself thinking about the girl with crystal skin and soft eyes. He wondered if she was safe, if her world was still glowing. He didn't understand why her memory stayed so strong in his mind. In two distant hearts, one human, one alien, the same thought echoed quietly through space. The warmth they shared that night had never truly faded. Months passed since the day Elias Ward left Lumeris 9. The station had become quieter, emptier for Sarai. She went to work every day, fixed communication links, tested power relays, and smiled when others looked. But deep inside, the warmth she once felt was missing. The Eliri did not understand emotions like humans did. Yet she felt a strange pull in her heart every time she looked at the stars. Sometimes when the station lights dimmed at night, she would wrap herself in the same thermal blanket Elias had left behind, the one she kept secretly folded under her bed. It no longer carried his warmth, but it reminded her of safety, of kindness, of that heartbeat she could still remember. Across the galaxy, Elias was serving at a mining colony called Row 47, a lonely, dust-covered world. The machines there were old, always breaking, and the local team depended on him to keep everything running. He worked long hours trying to bury his thoughts under metal and noise, but no matter how hard he tried, memories of Sarai returned every time the wind howled outside the base. He could almost hear her soft voice saying, "Promise me you'll come back." One evening, while repairing a faulty antenna, Elias noticed strange interference signals coming through his monitor. Static bursts carried fragmented Eliri distress codes. He frowned and ran a quick translation through the system. It was an emergency signal from Lumeris 9. Something had gone terribly wrong. He opened the communication channel, but the signal was weak and broken. Only a few words came through. "Reactor core, overload. City in danger." Without waiting for orders, Elias jumped from his chair. He contacted command, but no rescue ships were near enough. The main fleet was days away. If he didn't act, millions could die, including Sarai. He checked his small cruiser, the Horizon's Light, still docked and half repaired. It wasn't built for combat or radiation storms, but it was fast. He made his decision. "If I burn the engines at max, I can reach Lumeris 9 in 20 hours, he said to himself. The other crew tried to stop him. "Captain Ward, you'll never make it through the plasma belt alone." One engineer shouted. Elias only replied, "I made a promise." He launched the ship into the dark void, the engines roaring like thunder. The small craft shook violently as it entered the radiation zone, but Elias held the controls steady. He didn't sleep, didn't rest. He only thought of the alien girl who had trusted him when her own people doubted his kind. Back on Lumeris 9, panic filled the corridors. The reactor core deep beneath the city had gone unstable after a meteor impact. The protective grid was failing, and the Eliri engineers were unable to fix the human-made systems that controlled the reactor. The heat levels were rising every hour. Sarai stood among the technicians, her face pale, her glow dim. "If the core breaches, the whole city will melt," one engineer said helplessly. "The humans built this section," another muttered bitterly. "Only they understand it." Sarai's mind raced. She remembered the way Elias used to work, how he explained each circuit carefully, how he solved problems others gave up on. Her heart tightened. If he were here, she thought. As if answering her silent wish, the sky above the station flared with light. A small human ship came through the storm clouds, cutting across the radiation zone. The crew gasped in disbelief. Sarai ran to the viewing platform and stared. She knew that ship. Her light brightened instantly. "He came back," she whispered. Elias's ship landed roughly on the outer platform, smoke rising from its engines. He stumbled out wearing a protective suit, face pale but determined. When he saw Sarai running toward him, he gave a tired smile. "You really thought I'd forget my promise?" Her voice shook. "You shouldn't have come."
"The reactor is too unstable. You'll die."
"I didn't come this far to watch you burn," he said firmly. Without another word, he pushed past the frightened guards and went straight to the reactor chamber. Sarai followed close behind, ignoring the warnings from her superiors. The deeper they went, the hotter and darker the corridors became. Sparks flew from broken cables and metal groaned under pressure. Inside the main chamber, glowing light filled the air. The reactor's energy pulse was wild and uneven. Radiation alarms screamed. Elias opened a maintenance hatch and began working with shaking hands. His suit's sensors warned of heat overload, but he kept going. "Give me the stabilizer module," he ordered. Sarai hesitated. "Your suit can't handle that temperature." "I'll manage," he said. "If I stop now, no one survives." She handed him the glowing tool. The energy flared as he pushed it into the core housing. The machine roared. Sparks burst everywhere. Elias gritted his teeth, holding the device steady until the readings began to drop. But the damage was too great. The last failsafe was jammed deep behind the coolant panel, impossible to reach without direct contact. He turned to Sarai. "If I go in there, the radiation will burn through my suit. Then don't." She cried. "We can find another way." "There's no time," he said quietly. "Seal the upper doors once I'm in." Sarai shook her head. "I won't leave you." "Sarai," Elias said, meeting her glowing eyes. "You once told me my warmth changed you. But you changed me too. You made me believe peace is more than words. Let me do this." Tears of light gathered in her crystal eyes. "Humans are foolish," she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But we keep our promises." Before she could stop him, he climbed into the chamber and forced the failsafe lever down. The reactor light flared bright white, then slowly calmed. The alarms faded. The readings dropped to normal. The station was safe. When the outer doors opened again, Sarai ran inside. Elias lay near the console, his suit cracked, his skin pale. She fell beside him, pressing her glowing hand against his chest. "Elias, can you hear me?" He opened his eyes weakly.
"You're
safe." She nodded quickly, her tears glowing like stars. "You saved us. You saved everyone." He smiled faintly. "That's what humans do." His voice was fading. Sarai leaned closer, her own light wrapping around him like a gentle glow. The Aleri guards arrived carrying medkits and shielding panels. They lifted him carefully, but before they took him away, Sarai whispered something near his ear, words no one else heard. When Elias woke later in the medical bay, his body was weak, but alive. The doctors told him the Aleri had used their energy to stabilize his cells. He blinked slowly and saw Sarai sitting nearby, watching him. "You made it," she said softly. He smiled. "Guess I did." "The council has lifted the old rules," she continued. "They said a bond between our kind saved the station." "You changed them, Elias." He tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. "I just fixed a reactor." She shook her head. "No, you fixed hearts." For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the station returned to normal. Steady, peaceful. Outside, the stars shone brighter than before. Later that week, a ceremony was held in the Great Hall of Lumeris 9. Humans and Aleri stood together for the first time without division. The council presented Elias with a glowing shard of crystal, a sign of eternal trust. Sarai stood beside him, her light warm and bright. When the crowd cheered, she turned to him and said quietly, "When I first met you, I thought humans were made of fire. Now I see you are made of heart." Elias looked at her, smiling softly. "And you're made of light, Sarai. Together, that's enough." From that day forward, humans and Aleri worked side by side, building ships, repairing systems, and exploring the stars together. And though many stories spread about the human who saved a world, only Sarai knew the truth, that what truly saved them all was not power or skill, but a promise kept between two souls from different worlds. Every night, when the station lights dimmed, Sarai would walk to the observation window. Sometimes Elias joined her, standing in silence. They didn't need words anymore. The stars told their story. The warmth of a human heart and the glow of an alien soul bound together by a promise that even time and distance could not break.